First of all, let's just talk about the EU, European Commission. Was this expected? All free rein for them now to get the deal through?
Yes, it was expected. In fact, there's very little left in terms of real sort of regulatory clearances they need to do. I think they only need antitrust approval in Japan, which again is kind of a foregone conclusion. So this was expected, but as you say, it comes across or comes sort of along this backdrop of potential stock manipulation in both CA and Broadcom.
So perhaps no wonder we got a bit of a share market relief and a spike higher on the expected EU news. Let's dig into this memo. So what exactly happened? This memo goes live and everyone thinks initially it's real that they're being investigated.
Yeah, so to back up even further, Broadcom is a company that has been in the crosshairs of the US government before CFIUS blocked their last deal with Qualcomm, citing national security concerns. So there has always been this slight sense around them of like, are they really trusted by the government as a good actor in the tech space? Then we see this memo show up, which purports to be from the Department of Defense, saying we have all these concerns and it doesn't look like a deal we want to see happen. Rand Paul cites some figures from the memo that were incorrect. Whether or not
he cite them? Because he's
in a conversation with Bloomberg, and what we don't know is whether or not he actually had the memo or whether he just by coincidence was sort of citing these same figures. Anyway, he said he wants a CFIUS review of this deal and he thinks there are problems with it. Then we find out that the DOJ and the SEC are both looking into whether or not there has actually been market manipulation, because they've seen the memo, they think the memo is a fake, and they think, therefore, that someone was trying to move the shares. There is, we should note, quite significant short interest in CA. I think about 8% of the float was actually out short. That said, on the other side, the spread on the deal is tiny. It's really, really tight spread.
They expect it to go through.
Which the market expects this one to go through. This isn't the same as Qualcomm. I mean, you could draw some comparisons because they're both tech, but it's a much smaller deal, much less critical to sort of, US infrastructure. And also, crucially, Qualcomm was the national champion that Trump and his administration had identified as they wanted Qualcomm to be the global leader in semiconductors. And they said, look, if we allow these companies to merge, that potentially gives China a leg up in the race to 5G. Not the same issue with CA.
Just briefly, does this stuff happen often, that these sorts of letters, these spoof letters go round? How often are they investigated?
The answer is no, that doesn't happen very often. And if it does happen, we don't get to see it because CFIUS is by its nature so very secretive. Interestingly, we are in an environment where it's starting to happen more. CFIUS has become much more muscular in its ability and its willingness to actually block deals coming into the US. We're seeing it outside the US as well. China is being much tighter in terms of what it will and won't allow through. We saw that recently when they blocked Qualcomm from their own deal with an XP. And in the EU, we've just seen new legislation come through, which makes it much harder for foreign investors to come in and do anything that's considered critical infrastructure investment acquisitions.